From the largest election team on local television, a virtual congressional debate with Salud Carbajal and Andy Caldwell, and your moderator, Scott Hennessy.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for this NewsChannel special, a virtual congressional debate between Democratic Congressman Salud Carbajal and Republican challenger Andy Caldwell. I'm joined by political analyst and reporter Jerry Roberts, Newshawk reporter Josh Molina, and Lisa Andre, who reports for the Santa Maria Times, Lompoc Record, and Santa Ynez Valley News. For the next hour, we'll be asking the candidates questions on key topics. That includes questions from you, our viewers. Each candidate will have 45 seconds to respond to each question. If one brings up the other candidate during their answer, we will give that candidate 30 additional seconds to respond. Both candidates will have up to 1 minute for opening and closing statements. The candidates took part in a guessing game ahead of this debate to determine who goes first. Based on those results, Congressman Carbajal may begin. You have 1 minute for your opening statement.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you to KUYT for hosting this important forum for the public tonight. I immigrated to this country when I was 5 years old with my family. I was the youngest of 7. My father was a miner in his early years, and then he was a farm worker. And I know what it's like to struggle coming from low income, low economic means. We lived in public housing. Just like I know that many families today are struggling when you consider the impacts that COVID has had in our nation and on the Central Coast, from our public health to our economy. Many people are hurting. That's why I'm proud to have voted for 4 economic bipartisan stimulus packages that brought forward billions of dollars for the Central Coast, including $77 million for our area hospitals. We saved over 158,000 jobs and provided over $1 billion in loans to our local businesses. I'm proud to represent the Central Coast in fighting for good jobs, addressing climate change, and improving our health care. I look forward to earning your vote.
Mr. Carbajal. Now, Mr. Caldwell, you have 1 minute for your opening statement.
I too want to thank you for hosting this debate, and I want to thank Salud for showing up for this debate. I grew up here on the Central Coast. I've lived here for 52 years. My father was a career veteran. My mother was an immigrant, English as a second language. We grew up poor as well because my dad died when I was 9 years old. I've been working since I was 9 years old for my family, and I now work for my family of 7 children. I want to have a better opportunity for families here. That's one of my chief priorities. I was terrified at the calls to defund the police. I've been terrified about the number of jobs we have lost to China. And then finally, schools are still closed. Private schools are open, but public schools are closed. So I want public safety, I want law and order, and I want school choice. And I believe I can work for you to deliver that, because we're not getting what we deserve and what we need in the here and now.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Let's begin our questioning with plans to address the spread of COVID-19. Congressman Carbajal, you are getting over your exposure to the virus. It has infected nearly 8 million Americans and has led to more than 215,000 deaths. It's also wreaked havoc on the economy. Mr. Caldwell, your plan to address COVID-19 is to, quote, isolate, serve, and protect the most vulnerable while pursuing herd immunity for those least susceptible, get the economy open and going again, as well as our schools, end quote. Infectious disease experts warn against that strategy. The head of the World Health Organization said allowing a dangerous virus that we don't fully understand to run free is simply unethical. It's not an option, end quote. Is that what you're suggesting?
That question is to me. Scott, unfortunately, you're reading an old World Health Organization report. 2 weeks ago, they issued a new one saying the lockdown is hurting poor people disproportionately the world over, and then we're going to have higher comorbidities from poverty and all the other effects of a lockdown/shutdown. We did not go into COVID alone. It's been around every country in the world. And Sweden did the best thing they could, and that was they isolated the vulnerable, and then the rest people practiced good hygiene, wearing a mask, washing their hands, and the like. The problem here is we shut down parts of our economy. We didn't shut down Target, Costco, or Walmart, but we shut down mom and pop shops and stores. And that was a huge problem. We've got to open up our economy. Harvard, Stanford, and Oxford
Mr. Caldwell, thank you. Your time is up.
For reopening our society.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Your time is up. That quote from the World Health Organization director came from October 12th, by the way. Let's now go, Mr. Carbajal, question to you, your response.
Well, we shouldn't have to choose between our public health and our economy. We need to listen to our public health professionals and our scientists who tell us that we need to adhere to wearing masks, social distancing, and all the guidance that they've been providing. I think this president has been reckless in polarizing this very important issue, wearing masks or not wearing masks, having super spreader events. That is not how we're going to get out of this crisis. The way we're going to do it is to adhere to good, sound science and the advice of our public health professionals.
Let's go now to Lisa Andre from the Santa Maria Times with a question to Mr. Carbajal.
Good afternoon, Mr. Carbajal.
Good afternoon, Lisa.
Thank you. After the elections and a president is determined, acknowledging that there is a significant political divide, please describe the ways in which you will work to unify the Central Coast across all political parties for the sake of forward progress.
Thank you, Lisa. Well, I will continue to meet with all my constituents, those that supported me, those that are Democrats, or those that are Republicans. I'm gonna meet with everyone and continue to have roundtables and discussions and interfaces to make sure that I'm hearing from them firsthand and that they feel that I am a representative, that while they might not have voted, I'm gonna be there to represent the entire district. So the best thing to do is to model the way, to be civil, as I pledged when I first came to Congress. I took a civility pledge to not demagogue one another, to be passionate in our debates, but not be disrespectful and uncivil. I think we need to model the way first and foremost and bring people together despite our differences. We have more in common than we have in our differences.
Mr. Caldwell, your response?
Well, I believe that the job of the representative is to make themselves accessible to the voters. Every 2 years, we have a job interview. An election is a job interview. I've accepted every speaking engagement that I've received where Salud has turned all of these down. Various chambers of commerce, Rotary clubs, League of Women Voters. He's turned them all down. The Farm Bureau. I showed up at all of these meetings. He refused to show up. He has been hiding from the constituency. Now, I'll give him this last 2 weeks because he had COVID, and I pray for his full recovery. But the fact of the matter is he has not made himself accessible. I've been to places like Shandon and Cambria and Morro Bay and Lompoc. Remember, Salud called Lompoc the armpit of the county? People there have never met him. He's served here for 4 years already, and they've never met him.
Thank you. Mr. Carbajal, you have been spoken to directly here, so you have 30 seconds to respond.
Well, I've been throughout the district on and off since I was elected. I visit with all the different areas of the Central Coast, and I'm proud of that interface. As a matter of fact, I've spent more time in the northern part of the country, the county, and San Luis Obispo County than in the southern part, trying to balance equity in terms of my presence. I'm very proud of the interface and the constituent service that I've done.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. Let's go now to Jerry Roberts for our next question.
Thanks, Scott. Many restaurant owners, retailers, and other merchants within the 24th Congressional District say that restrictions placed on their business are arbitrary, constantly changing, and out of scale with the scope of the pandemic locally. As you weigh the cost benefits of inflicting economic damage versus protecting public health, what do you say and what can you do for small business owners who see their livelihoods and lifetime of work and investment being swept away?
Well, as I mentioned before, we let Walmart, Costco, and Target stay open, and we shut down every other small business. Secondly, people can go on a plane, they can sit elbow to elbow on a plane for 6 hours, but they can't go to church. They can go to a pot shop, but they can't go to church. Jerry, your question is right on. The standards have been arbitrary and capricious, and Gavin Newsom and the other quote unquote experts have continued to move the goalposts and even remove the goalpost. We've got to get back to science. And with all due respect to the moderators, I've had these scientists on my show. I've reviewed what the WHO, the CDC, Oxford, MIT, and Harvard have said about this. And I believe science is what I'm standing for.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Mr. Carbajal?
Thank you. Nobody wants anybody to hurt. So I think that our public health professionals, our scientists, and our governor have really been trying to come up with that balance of not having to choose between our public health and our economy and our businesses opening. But I think we need to do it in a balanced, safe way. Moreover, we need to continue to provide more federal funding for our small businesses so that they could continue to stay afloat and weather this very challenging time that they're experiencing so that they don't go bankrupt. We need to protect our economy as best as we can. And the way you do that is by providing our businesses as much support as we can. My opponent doesn't believe in more economic relief for our small businesses and the Central Coast.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. Let's go now to Josh Molina for our next question.
Excuse me, Scott. Excuse me, he mentioned me.
Okay, you have 30 seconds. Go ahead.
30 seconds. Salud Carbajal wants to spend money the federal government doesn't have. They've spent over $5 trillion. I agreed with the original relief because we didn't know what was going to hit us. He's spending money we don't have, and trillions of dollars. And he's either printing that money or borrowing that money and then pretending to be a hero to the American people when he's passing that debt on to our children and grandchildren.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Let's go now to Josh Molina with our next question.
Okay, thank you. Each of you is completely capable of pointing out the shortcomings of each other's party. Can you, Mr. Carbajal, and you, Mr. Caldwell, be honest with the audience and explain the ways your own party is responsible for the problems in Washington, D.C. and this country? And let's start off with Congressman Carbajal.
Well, I think there's way too much partisanship and gridlock in Washington. And I think both parties, Democratic Party included, and the Republican Party, spend too much time bickering about petty things instead of really focusing on substantive solutions to the many challenges that we have. Moving forward an infrastructure package, making sure we're addressing our national debt, making sure that we are doing everything possible to fund our government timely. We could do a lot more together, working together, than getting caught up in the silly skirmishes that go on in Washington. And both parties are responsible for that.
Josh, go ahead.
I'm just wondering if you could be a little more specific, Congressman Carbajal. Do you have a criticism of Nancy Pelosi or anything specific that the party is doing that is perhaps disruptive to progress?
Absolutely. Look, just like Republicans, the Democrats, when we're in charge, we hold the speakership. And there's rules about the House that have to be adhered to and are developed each and every Congress. Well, I've been part of the Problem Solvers Caucus, and we demanded and achieved a 290 vote co-sponsorship on bills that would allow for a vote to occur on the House. Before, only the leadership could allow for such a vote. It didn't matter whether you had a lot of co-sponsors. I believe that it's things like that that need to happen in the House that Nancy needs to address to make sure that it's more collegial and that it's more bipartisan.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. Mr. Caldwell, your response.
I am extremely critical when the Republicans held the majority in the House and the Senate. They too spent money like drunken sailors. This is a huge, huge criticism of both parties. Now, my opponent likes to talk about how bipartisan he is, but he has a 100% voting record with Nancy Pelosi. Nobody has ever accused Nancy Pelosi of being bipartisan. Secondly, she represents an entirely urban elite district. His district, our district, your district, folks, is semi-rural. We should not have a 100% voting record with Nancy Pelosi. Her district's getting 2 votes, ours is getting nothing. Finally, Salud is 0 for 48 in original bills getting signed into law.
Mr. Carbajal, you have 30 seconds if you'd like them.
Thank you. I vote the district. That's what guides all my votes. And I'm proud of the fact that I've sponsored over 40 bills, and over 50% of them are bipartisan, in keeping with the bipartisan value that I try to achieve. So with that, I will just say that it's preposterous to say that I vote with Nancy 100% of the time. And the bills that have passed the House that I sponsored, they're still waiting in Mitch McConnell's Senate in his graveyard.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. We have received many questions from our viewers over the last week. A lot of them are about the economy, especially as we recover from the pandemic. So our question here is, what would you do to increase county revenue without raising taxes? And it will go first to Mr. Caldwell.
Thank you for that question. Folks, make no mistake about it. Salud Carbajal is on the record that he will undo the Trump tax cuts. Secondly, he is endorsing Prop 15, the highest tax increase in California history that will affect farmers, ranchers, commercial, retail, and industrial properties. So that means California is facing 2 of the biggest tax hikes in history. So Salud Carbajal does not have a solution other than tax and spend and spend and spend. He has no solution. I spent every Tuesday with Salud at the county supervisors for about 12 years. He is very comfortable representing Montecito and UCSB, but not Santa Maria, Tascadero, Paso Robles, or the rest of the working class people in this district. There is no tax he doesn't support.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Mr. Carbajal, your response, the question was, how can revenue be increased without raising taxes?
Well, I think the way you do that is support the local engines that drive our economy, support agriculture, make sure that they are viable, that they have the support that they need, that they have the labor force that they depend on, that we also look at bringing new economic engines to the area, offshore wind energy, investments in solar, as well as building commercial launch off of Vandenberg Air Force Base. Those are the types of things that we can do to make sure that our economy continues to thrive. But let me just conclude by saying that Mr. Caldwell is putting forth a lot of misinformation, but I hope you give me the 30 seconds that I am owed to address it.
Okay, let's go to Mr. Caldwell here.
Yes.
Okay, I have worked. Oh, are we doing the 30 seconds?
The next question here. Let's do this. Let's move on to the next question. We'll have more opportunity to talk about this. Let's go back to Lisa Andre. Our next subject is going to be on oil drilling. Lisa.
Thank you, Scott. I'm going to direct this question to you first, Mr. Caldwell. A resolution opposing a U.S. Bureau of Land Management plan to open public lands to oil and gas leasing on over 1.2 million acres of California land, including San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties, was approved by the Santa Barbara County Board of Supervisors in December 2019. At that meeting, you pulled for wise use and argued that since California's gas and electric prices are 50% more than the rest of the country, the resolution would hurt the poor the most. What is your current stance on the expansion of oil drilling in the region?
I believe that the most important thing we can do from a national security point of view is to be 100% independent from the Middle East oil. Secondly, California is entirely hypocritical. It claims it's going green, but we import more electricity than any other state, and we import more oil and gas than any other state. And we have more cars and drive more miles than anybody else in the United States of America. The bottom line here is that we are an oil-rich region, and I believe that we have the most stringent regulations in the entire world. And until we wean ourselves off from oil and gas, I believe it's safer to utilize those resources here than anywhere else.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Mr. Carbajal, to you, your current stance on the expansion of oil drilling in the region.
I don't believe we need to expand oil and gas drilling, whether it's off our coast of California or the Central Coast or in our public lands. That's why I put forward a bill called the Central Coast Heritage Protection Act, which will allow us to put 250,000 acres of the Los Padres Forest and the Carrizo Plain into conservation and preclude future future gas and oil development. I think it's important that we start transitioning sooner rather than later from fossil fuels and investments into renewable energy that'll bring about good jobs and at the same time address this climate change crisis that we are experiencing.
Let's go now to Jerry Roberts, who has a question on combating wildfires in the state.
California is in the midst of its worst wildfire season in history, and Governor Newsom has pointed to climate change as the primary cause for the size and violence of this year's fires, while the administration has challenged that assertion and blamed poor fuel and forest management. In your view, which of the two, climate change or forest mismanagement, is a more serious cause of the danger of wildfires and therefore a more urgent priority for the federal government to address?
Well, I think climate change is the biggest challenge that we have. As a result, we now have year-round fire season. I don't need to tell you how many years we were in drought. We have such weather changes that have wreaked havoc on California. And as such, that's why we're experiencing the fires that we are experiencing. So I believe we need to address climate change as a priority, but we also need to provide the tools and the funding to our firefighters so that they have the ability to do fuels management and prevent future fires as well. That's why I supported ending fire borrowing and create a fund for disaster fire funds. And also I initiated the Forest Act legislation to make sure that our firefighters have the resources they need to fight fires in the backcountry.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. Mr. Caldwell, same question to you.
I've been addressing this issue. In fact, Salud saw me several times a year addressing this issue. California has 140 million dead trees. The United States has 3 to 4 billion dead trees. Why? Because of a hands-off approach to the forests. We allowed these forests to grow at 10 times the normal healthy density because there was no logging, there was no thinning, there was no grazing, there was no mechanical clearing, and there were no control burns. And only now, because people have died and hundreds of millions of dollars in property have been destroyed, only now are they saying, well, maybe we need to rethink this. I've been talking to Salud Carbajal and anybody else that would listen on this for 30 years.
Thank you. Mr. Carbajal, you were mentioned directly there. You can respond 30 seconds.
Well, the first wildland fire plan in Santa Barbara County when I was in the County Board of Supervisors was developed for the Mission Canyon area that I represented. So this is an issue that I've been working on for many years as well. But I will tell you that we have to address climate change and we have to provide our firefighters the necessary resources they need to do responsible fuels management, not just brushing and doing things that without a plan. It has to be responsible fuels management.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. Next, we go back to Josh Molina. Josh.
California Governor Gavin Newsom recently unveiled an executive order to require auto manufacturers to only sell zero-emission passenger vehicles and trucks by 2035. Where do you stand on this mandate? And let's start with Mr. Caldwell.
Vehicles are getting cleaner and cleaner. I think hybrids are the way to go. And one of the reasons is we don't have enough electricity generation to power what we're doing right now, which is why we're having rolling blackouts again. And this is one of the reasons I want to keep Diablo Nuclear Power Plant open. It represents $1 billion to our economy, $250 million in payroll, and most importantly, 10% of our state's electricity supply. And so you cannot shift to 100% renewable transportation sector unless you know you have the electricity generation to sustain the same. And like I said, we're hurting right now. We're getting rolling blackouts right now as we speak. And the bottom line, I would also like to build a desalinization plant next to it to supply our farmers and urbanites with water.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Mr. Carbajal, the question is about zero emissions vehicles in California.
I do support the governor's bold action and bold vision. We have a crisis, a climate change crisis, and that requires bold action. So I certainly support the governor, just as I supported the previous governor and this governor's goals also for renewable energy. California has set a high bar for being able to transition ourselves to renewable energy from fossil fuels. But we need to do this in a smart way as well. So I look forward for the governor articulating a plan of how we're going to get there, how we're going to achieve those goals, those ambitious goals that he put out. And I think that the public will have an opportunity to see that blueprint.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. We have another viewer question next. Tina Dean in Orchid says, shutting down the Plains All-American pipeline after the oil spill cost many constituents their jobs and our community valuable tax revenue. Will either of you commit to returning this valuable commerce back to our district? Mr. Carbajal, you get to answer this one first.
Well, I was on the Board of Supervisors when this devastating oil spill occurred on land that went onto our shore. It devastated our environment. It devastated our economy. It put everything into hold. What I focused on is passing the necessary funds so that PIMSA, the federal agency, can actually bring about safety emergency valves requirements so that we don't have these types of problems again in the future. I'm against future offshore oil development off our coast, and any oil company that wants to continue that's already there has to prove that they can do it safely and for the environment and for the economy.
Thank you. Mr. Caldwell, your response to the same question.
Well, what Salud may not be aware of is that Exxon still has a permit to operate one of the pipelines that did not break. And so I support safe oil, gas, and wind and solar. You know, one of the things when he keeps talking about going to renewables, we don't know where we're going to get all the rare earth materials to build batteries. We don't know where we're going to get them to build solar panels. And of course, then we have a problem with wind in terms of it decimates and kills endangered species, birds and bats. And then also, how do you dispose of those batteries and those solar panels in a safe way? The Democrats' plan is shoot first and aim later.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Let's go now to Lisa Andre from the Santa Maria Times with a question about Vandenberg Air Force Base. And this one will first go to Mr. Salud Carbajal. Lisa, you're next.
Thank you, Scott. The United States Space Command, which was founded under President Ronald Reagan in 1985 and closed due to consolidation in 2002, last December reemerged under the Trump administration, with Vandenberg Air Force Base's new role as a designated host site for a key component of the program. If elected, how will you help drive and manage its economic impacts on the Central Coast? And What is your vision for the future as the program develops?
Thank you, Lisa. Well, I've already been working on this issue during my tenure in Congress. I've been working with Senator Feinstein and Senator Harris to encourage the Department of Defense to select Vandenberg as the headquarters for Space Command. I think that'll bring many opportunities to our area, and I think Vandenberg is poised to be the candidate to be selected. Secondly, I think we also need to help our local economy in our area by making sure that we are putting in the infrastructure at Vandenberg Air Force Base to be able to move forward more commercial launches that I think will help. And with my work on the on the House Armed Services Committee, I have been and will continue to work diligently to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. Mr. Caldwell, the question is posed to you.
I'm fully supportive of Space Force and Space Command. And this is one of the utter failures of people like Joe Biden. He doesn't recognize China as a world threat. China has been developing infrastructure to take over the world in 140 countries, and they've already taken over our manufacturing and industrial sectors. The bottom line here is I welcome high-tech jobs at Vandenberg Air Force Base, but there's a lot of people, in fact, most of the people, a super majority of people on the Central Coast will not qualify for those jobs. We need blue-collar manufacturing and industrial jobs so that everybody has a shot at the middle class. That's what I've been fighting for with organized labor, agriculture, and business for 30 years. Not just the elites, but the common working person.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Our next question, we go back to Jerry Roberts.
Mr. Caldwell, you have repeatedly suggested Mr. Carbajal's a socialist. In an interview recently, you said the Democratic Socialists hijacked the Democratic Party, and Mr. Carbajal has been way too complicit in that. Can you tell us specifically which of his political and policy positions represent socialism? And Mr. Carbajal, would you then respond?
Thank you, Jerry. I mentioned earlier that Nancy Pelosi and Salud have 100% voting records, but he also has a 95% voting record with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is a confessed socialist. And I was a Democrat half my life. I still have the values of John F. Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy, and Martin Luther King, but the party left me. And I believe that the party is leaving more and more Democrats behind each and every day. And again, he supports the Green New Deal. That is a complete takeover of our economy. There's no other way to describe it. Obamacare was a complete takeover of our healthcare system. So all of these takeovers by the government is controlled by the government. That is a form of socialism.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Mr. Carbajal, here because Mr. Caldwell went up to a minute. You have 1 minute to respond.
Thank you. That's the kind of name calling and mischaracterization that goes on in Washington all the time. I'm really disappointed. Let me just share with you then, since my service in the Marine Corps to protect our democracy, to my service in Congress and in local government, I believe in our good capitalistic system that works. Let me share with you that I will support policies that put the Central Coast first, our economy, our local businesses, our schools, our workers. That's what I have been focusing on, and I will continue to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. Our next question comes from Josh Molina from NewsHawk.
Thank you. Community college funding has been severely hurt by the COVID-19 pandemic. And as you know, community college students are often first-generation college students who are looking to break the cycle in their families. What will you do? What have you done to improve funding for community colleges and help a system that nationwide serves some of the most vulnerable populations? We'll start with Congressmember Carbajal.
Thank you. Well, I'm the first in my family to have gone to college. So I understand especially for those first generation students to go to college. I think the federal government has and continues and should continue to make sure that we are providing good financial aid availability and accessibility. That's why I introduced the Degrees Not Dead Act, which would double the Pell Grants and make them year-round so that students could have more access and affordability to go follow their dreams to get a higher education. That's what we need to do to make sure that good financial aid and more support for our students continues, including food security programs.
Thank you.
So, because so many of them are struggling.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. Same question to you, Mr. Caldwell. 45 seconds.
Well, you know, anybody that says they're for schools and they're allowing them to stay closed, there's a problem. There's a disconnect there. What we have to understand is poor people are getting disproportionately hurt by the shutdown, including school-age children and their parents who can't go to work because they've got to stay home. Most poor families, they don't have a laptop or a device for every kid to be able to go to school on the internet. They don't have it. And once again, Congress says, well, I'm spending this and I'm spending that. They don't tell you where the money's coming from. We do not have enough money to keep the economy closed because the economy is the source of the money. So again, I want schools to reopen safely and soon, just like the private schools are.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Many of our viewers have voiced concern over the Diablo Canyon decommissioning. The question is, how will you bring high-paying jobs to the Central Coast once it closes? And Mr. Caldwell, we will begin with you.
Well, this is the bold leadership that we need for this district. I propose to keep Diablo open. Diablo is not closing because it's inefficient or it's old or it's unsafe. It's closing because of rules and regulations that California put in through cooling, community choice aggregation, and the standards required for the quote unquote renewable portfolio. There is no substitute for the base load that Diablo generates 24/7. With regard to solar, for instance, we can't store solar, we can't store wind. California is now paying Arizona to take our excess solar because we have no use for it in the middle of the day when it produces. We need a balanced portfolio. We can't afford to put all our eggs in one basket.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Mr. Carbajal, the same question regarding the closure of Diablo Canyon to you.
Thank you. It's unfortunate that it will be closing. Decommissioning will start in 24, 25. So what we need to do is start looking at that facility as a way to be able to help perhaps offshore oil wind as one of the areas where we could bring in that energy onshore. I've been working with the Department of Defense and the Department of the Interior to bring about offshore wind opportunities and technologies off the slow coast. We also need to look at making sure we're investing in more renewable energy to create new employment sectors that will help us produce our energy and at the same time create good jobs that will help those workers that will be displaced, including in the region. That's why I introduced the energy opportunity zones to bring incentivize businesses to invest in renewable energy.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. Our next subject is immigration, and the first question will go to you, Mr. Carbajal. It comes from Lisa Andre from the Santa Maria Times.
Thank you. Agriculture is a $47 billion industry in California. And UC Davis estimates that up to 60% of California's 421,000 farm workers are undocumented. Under the Trump administration's immigration enforcement guidelines, undocumented farm workers may be targeted for deportation. Since the introduction of the Agricultural Worker Program Act in January of 2019, which you co-sponsored, Mr. Carbajal, what have you done further to ensure that the bill passes? And what is your promise to the farm workers of the Central Coast should you be elected? And Mr. Caldwell, if you would add to this question.
Thank you. I was an original co-sponsor of the Farm Workforce Modernization Act that you're referring to, that passed this year. And it was a bipartisan bill. It would do two things. It would provide a legal path for farm workers and their families, thereby also creating a sustainable labor force for agriculture. And it would create and modernize the H-2A program, thereby creating a new guest worker program. This had such broad support, both Republicans and Democrats, the California Farm Bureau, the United Farm Workers, and the United States Chambers of Commerce. I've been working to advocate to move that forward, but with this administration, we've had no success. I'm going to continue to co-sponsor that bill and advocate for it in the coming year as well.
Thank you,
we
Mr.
need to
Carbajal.
do this right away, and we can.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. Mr. Caldwell, your promise to farm workers if elected.
Well, unlike Salud, I've been directly employed by the farming industry as part of the Coalition of Labor, Agriculture, and Business. I have also been endorsed by the Santa Barbara County Farm Bureau. And if you look at my campaign finance report, you'll find out that all of my contributions are from local businesses, including every major farming family in this region. Unlike Salud Carbajal, who's raked in upwards of $1 million from large corporations across America, lobbyists, and union bosses. So follow the money. If I'm supported by the farming community, that is proof positive they have confidence in me to address immigration, plus all the regulations that's making it harder and harder to farm here on the Central Coast.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Mr. Carbajal, you have been directly addressed here, so you have 30 seconds to respond.
Thank you. I'm proud of the farmers, the individuals, and organizations that have supported my campaign. They've done so because they know I've been an effective legislator in Washington representing the values and the priorities of the Central Coast. I'm very proud of their support.
Mr. Carbajal, let's go to our next question now from Jerry Roberts.
As a political matter, the U.S. is more bitterly politically polarized than at any time since the years before the Civil War. And there have been a lot of reasons pointed to by various commentators: ideology, race, and culture. I'm curious what each of you think is the source of this polarization, and if you would tell us one specific thing you would do to try to heal it.
Well, I am proud, and I will defend to my death the concept that all men are created equal and that the strength of America is e pluribus unum. And what happened, one of the reasons that we divided was we started emphasizing quote unquote multiculturalism years ago that started to make distinctions among us. I'm proud of the fact that my mother was from a foreign country and that, that she had to learn English when she came to this country. But the fact of the matter is we have to stress unity and we have to teach unity, the basis of unity, which goes back to our Declaration of Independence, and that all men are created equal. And that comes from God, not man. And we've got to return to our roots. And that's what the problem is in America. We've drifted from the same.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Mr. Carbajal, the question to you about bringing upon unity.
Great. Well, over the decades, we've created many disparities in our country. The poor and minorities and women have oftentimes suffered the brunt of that. Income inequality, healthcare inequality, higher education achievement inequality and disparities. And I think that has really festered a lot of challenges. And then we have an administration like this with Mr. Trump doing everything possible to divide us instead of unite us. What we need to do is really appreciate each other's differences and also appreciate the things that we can work on together to move forward solutions to the many challenges that we have. We have racial tensions and racial inequalities, and we need to address those head on. The way we do it is we come together as a country. We roll up our sleeves and we work through our differences.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. Let's go back to Josh Molina for our next question. Josh.
Thank you. The nation was shaken by the videotape murder of George Floyd. In the aftermath, many people across the country called for the defunding of police. How would you describe the nation's problem with police brutality toward people of color, and what can be done to address this issue?
Thank you. Well, we all saw that tragedy unfold where Mr. Floyd was killed by a law enforcement officer. Certainly what that did was bring to light the long-standing racial inequalities that have existed. And we've had many other cases, not just Mr. Floyd. That reminds us that we really need to bring about police reforms. And that's why I supported the Justice and Policing Act that would bring about sensible reforms to law enforcement throughout the country, would prohibit future no chokeholds, put body cameras on individuals, law enforcement officers, create standards, and incentivize law enforcement through federal funding to adopt these reforms.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. Mr. Caldwell, your response to the same question, please.
I, like anybody else, was shocked at the treatment of George Floyd. However, I've been equally shocked by cops getting murdered, police stations being firebombed, and the like. So we do need reform, but we also need to protect the men and women who are risking their lives to keep us safe each and every day. I am very proud that I got the endorsements of Atascadero Police, Santa Maria Police, plus all the deputy sheriffs in Ventura County, Santa Barbara County, and San Luis Obispo County, because they know I won't defund them under the name of reform. And this effort to defund the police, Salud Carbajal likes to distance himself from it, but he will not condemn it unequivocally as I will. We need more police training. We need more police protection so that they can protect our communities.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Mr. Carbajal, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you. I am not for defunding the police. I am for moving forward reforms. And again, I just want to clarify that Mr. Caldwell continues to put misinformation out there. And today is a perfect example. I am not for defunding the police. I don't know how else to tell him, but he keeps repeating the same thing over and over again.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. Let's go to our next viewer question. This one coming from Brian Cox, who asks, what have you done to unite community leaders from northern and southern Santa Barbara County and solve problems between the two regions? Let's start with Mr. Caldwell on this one.
For the last 30 years, my job has been working for the coalition of labor, agriculture, and business. Our organization is the only North-South County organization to ever unite. I've had almost every union organization on my board over that last 30 years, every type of agriculture and every type of business. Plus, I've won awards and endorsements from the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association and the Central Coast Taxpayers Association, because I do work across the aisle. My paycheck depends on it. It's not rhetoric for me. It is my daily existence. So I've been doing united work among Democrats, independents, libertarians, and Republicans for 30 years, and I have the support of all of them.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Mr. Carbajal, same question to you.
Thank you. When I was a county supervisor, I worked across the aisle and I worked with all constituencies to make sure that I heard firsthand their concerns, whether I agreed with them or not, but we could try to find common ground. And I continue to do that now in Congress. I interface with all walks of life, all constituents, families, individuals, workers, industries, to make sure I am hearing firsthand from individuals in terms of what's on their mind, what are their priorities, and what are their challenges, so that I could be a more effective representative for the Central Coast in Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. Let's go back to Lisa Andre for our next question about the economy. Lisa.
Scott. Mr. Caldwell, if you would answer first, please. If elected, please describe from a grassroots level what your immediate plans are to ensure a steady economic recovery for small businesses throughout the Central Coast that have been impacted and continue to be by the COVID-19 health crisis? And how does that differ from what you have already accomplished since the onset of the pandemic, working from your current capacity as the founder of the Coalition of Labor, Agriculture, and Business?
Thank you for that question. We have to bring good paying jobs back from China. China has literally been eating our lunch for decades. And it's up to the federal government to change the rules and regulations and tax burdens that drove those jobs offshore. There is no substitute for a "yes, we're open" sign on a business. A business can't recover, and the government does not have enough money to pay everybody to stay home and stay isolated. And so as a congressman, I believe I will have a greater authority to bring those jobs back. And in fact, I can tell you, I grew up in Lompoc, the quote unquote armpit of the county. We lost jobs there. And in Santa Maria, we lost Santa Maria Chili, Aero Automotive, Sunoco.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell.
A number, Union Sugar, the place I used to work for. We have to bring those jobs back.
Your time is up. Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Mr. Carbajal, your plans to stimulate the economy post-COVID.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to continue to work with a bi-county group called REACH, which is made up of business people and other stakeholders, to make sure that we continue to support the economic engines and employment sectors that drive our local economy. I'm going to continue to work with the federal government to try to get commercial launch to expand at Vandenberg Air Force Base. And we need to, again, support those sectors that are our economic engines: agriculture, light manufacturing, high tech, and making sure that we're not mindful also of our tourism industry. And we need to make sure we're supporting more housing opportunities on the Central Coast and our local airports, which really support our commerce in the area.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. Our next subject is health care. And for a question on that, we turn back to Jerry Roberts.
Thanks, Scott. With an expanded conservative majority, the U.S. Supreme Court is soon to take up a Republican-led challenge that could gut the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. If the Affordable Care Act is legally repealed, what would you do in Congress to protect people with pre-existing conditions who would lose their health insurance and be prevented by many insurers from enrolling in a new plan?
Great. Well, I'm hoping it's not rolled back. And that's the big fear with this confirmation that's being rammed. It's all about the Affordable Care Act. What I would do is do everything possible to move forward legislation to shore up what we would lose in a case like that, to ensure that people with pre-existing illnesses can continue to enhance our healthcare delivery system by adding a public option, by providing Medicare the ability to negotiate with pharmaceuticals to reduce our healthcare premiums and our prescription drug costs. Those are the types of things that I would do. I would work aggressively to move forward legislation to address the issue at hand that would be damaged by any decision by the Supreme Court.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. Mr. Caldwell, you have 45 seconds to answer as well.
Insanity is described as doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. President Obama promised that our premiums would go down, our deductibles would go down, and our benefits would go up. The exact opposite happened. I believe that government doesn't make anything cheaper, more affordable, or more plentiful. And neither do the insurance companies in the current model we have that bury our doctors in paperwork and bureaucracy. What I want to do is I want to move government out. I want to move the insurance companies out. I want to create health savings account where people can have a direct transaction with their doctor and get all the busybodies out of it. And I have pre-existing conditions. I've had asthma all my life. I'm also a senior citizen. I will not allow anything to take away pre-existing coverage or coverage for our seniors or anybody else.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Our final question, we go back to Josh Molina. This one is about gun control, and Mr. Caldwell, you can take it first. Josh.
Thank you, Scott. About 2/3 of all suicides in this country are by guns. What would you do, or what is the federal government's role in reducing the suicide rate? And how would you advocate for either gun control or mental health services to reduce the suicide rate?
Well, thank you for that. Again, people committing suicide is an issue of mental and emotional health and or economic outlook. When people lose their jobs, the rate of suicide goes up with domestic violence. There's all sorts of triggers for suicide. I want to focus on mental health and the mental health triggers, because people can commit suicide by different ways. In fact, we just lost County Supervisor Adam Hill to suicide. The bottom line here is that we have been spending, in these regions, we spend $100 million or more on mental health, social welfare, alcohol and drug and mental health services, upwards in Santa Barbara County alone, up to $300 million a year. We keep throwing money at it, but nothing changes.
Thank you, Mr.
We've
Caldwell.
got to do a different approach than funneling the money through government.
Mr. Caldwell, thank you. Mr. Carbajal, 45 seconds on gun control.
Thank you. We've had a number of tragedies in the Central Coast, especially in Isla Vista, with dealing with gun violence. My sister died of suicide when I was a young man. What we need is sensible gun laws. We need to pass universal background checks, which we did in the House, and it's waiting in Mitch McConnell's graveyard of bills. We also need to renew the assault weapons ban, and we need to move forward my bill, the Extreme Risk Protection Order Act, which would allow individuals who are in crisis, families of individuals, to go before the courts to make sure that they cannot keep temporarily guns of any type when they are in crisis or a danger to others. That's what we need to do.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. That concludes the question portion of the debate. Now on to closing statements. We'll begin with Congressman Carbajal. You have 1 minute for your closing statement.
Thank you very much. I appreciate KEYT holding this very important and informative virtual debate for the public. I think it's extremely important. Tonight, I hope that you were able to see that you have a clear choice between the two of us that are running for the 24th Congressional District. I believe that we need to build on the Affordable Care Act and protect those with pre-existing illnesses and continue to bring prices for health premiums and prescription drugs down. My opponent doesn't. I believe in protecting a woman's right to choose and making sure that Roe versus Wade is protected. My opponent doesn't. He doesn't even believe in abortion in cases of rape. I don't believe in future offshore oil drilling, gas and oil drilling off our coast and in our public lands. My opponent does. And he's also a lobbyist for oil companies. He calls himself a watchdog, but he's a lobbyist and he's been a lobbyist.
Thank you.
And more importantly, to be able to get beyond this COVID challenge, we need more federal economic stimulus funds.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal.
My opponent does not believe in that.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal.
Thank you very much. I look forward to earning your vote.
Thank you. Mr. Caldwell, you have 1 minute for your closing statement.
I should get about 5, considering how many bombs he just dropped. Anyway, I want to thank you for having this debate. The bottom line here, folks, what we're doing right now is not working. I am a working class guy. I've been working for the general public and taxpayers and small businesses my entire adult life. I want to continue that in Congress. We have never had a representative that was raised in the North County or raised in San Luis Obispo County to represent us. It's always been a Montecito-backed, UCSB voted in representative. And Salud does well representing Montecito and UCSB, but the rest of us, can you ever cite one thing that he has accomplished for you? One change he has made in your quality of life? What did he do for affordable housing when he was a county supervisor? What did he do about our electricity rates? Absolutely nothing. I'm a change agent because I'm representing you and working for you, and I appreciate you to vote for Andy Caldwell for Congress.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. It has been a pleasure conducting today's debate. Thank you also to our reporters, all of you who submitted questions, and all of you who have watched this debate for the 24th Congressional District. I'm Scott Hennessy. Thank you very much for being with us.